How to get proper song output like a pro? Now, to answer this question, we need to consider 4 important topics and make sure we do those 4 things correctly. And since a lot of you wanted me to do a video on this topic, I decided to explain these 4 steps that you need to follow properly in order to get a proper quality output. I'm Florina Jain, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and I put out a lot of music production related tutorials. So if that's something that you like, then hit the subscribe button. Let's get into the video. The first step is to make room for all your instruments. Suppose I have a violin and a guitar. I shouldn't place the guitar in the same frequency where the violin is also coming. Then you will not be able to hear both properly. So you need to place the violin's tone in a way where it doesn't properly, clash with the guitar. For example, I'll show you with a kick and a bass. Now in these 2 examples, I'll play that together. And this is the bass. Now both are low frequency instruments. The first thing I have to do is put an EQ plugin and make sure I remove frequencies and add frequencies in a way where these 2 tracks should not clash each other. I've already added an EQ on both these tracks. Let's just quickly analyze the EQ. Now this is for kick and this is for bass. Maybe I'm gonna put a solo a little shorter here. If you want to make space for both of these instruments so that they both shine together, and if you want to do that using an EQ, this is one way by which you can do. Now this is the kick and this is the bass track. Now whatever I subtract in the kick track using this EQ, I will add that frequency in the bass track. If I subtract some frequency in the bass track, I will add that frequency in the kick track. In this way, I am utilizing the frequencies that sound nice on a kick and that sound nice on a bass. You get the idea, right? So we'll just try that out. So I am going to cut a little bit of lows over here, but I'm going to utilize that in the bass. Now that's unbelievably weak. Now I am going to go to the bass. Along with the kick when it's playing, I'm just going to boost these frequencies. Let's keep it like this. We'll see if it's working. Now I am going to utilize some frequencies beyond this. That's the place where I can clearly hear the attack of that kick. So I'm just going to boost that. And we'll see what's coming inside this area. Doing this is really killing the clarity of the kick. I'm gonna do the same way this side as well. soloing only the bass. We listen to both together. So much of low frequencies that are constantly clashing. I can hear a lot of sub bass and most of the frequencies below 100 and 200 that were constantly clashing when it was without this EQ. But with the EQ, without, with. Now it sounds a little better. So this is one way by which you can clear out frequencies and make sure all instruments shine. If not, there's another method by which you can do, and that is sidechain. So let me quickly turn these off. I am going to put a compressor on the bass track. So dynamics, compressor, mono. But this time I'm going to sidechain the kick. So I'm going to go to audio, because it's an audio track, and I'm changing it to kick. Now I'm literally going to compress the bass every time the kick comes in. I'll show you a drastic setting. Look at how much of compression is happening. So this is another way by which you can clear out frequencies and make sure both the tracks shine. So what's essentially happening here is every time when the kick is playing, the bass is getting compressed, and when the kick doesn't play, bass volume is increased. This is what sidechain is. If you want to learn more about sidechain and how to properly sidechain kick bass and how these parameters work around, then I'll link a video on the screen. You can click that and learn about sidechain. But one advice I would give you is don't consider mixing as a way of fixing all your issues, okay? When you begin to arrange and when you begin to compose, so in a stage where you're choosing instruments for your track, make sure you choose a tone that doesn't clash with any other instrument. If you feel like it's clashing, that time itself you change the tone. Then you will still be doing changes like this, but it will be in a very subtle manner, so your processing will not be heavy. In turn, your output will sound natural. The second step is to add adequate amount of reverb and delay. A lot of beginners think when you have a lot of reverb and when you record on apps like Smule and mobile apps like that, we tend to add a lot of reverb, and beginners essentially think when you have a lot of reverb and it echoes around, then your track is sounding great. That's actually not the case. Your track has to be clear. Reverb is just an additional element that will make your track sound natural because it's giving an environment feeling. It's not making the track sound extremely raw. So you can utilize reverb, but utilize it in an adequate manner and don't overpower the reverb effect. So I'll tell you what an adequate reverb might sound like. Now I have a vocal track over here, and this bus 5 is the bus through which the reverb is running. I'll just play a small section of it. So the reverb is present, but it's not overpowering the track. So I have sent it through a bus. This is the reverb that I've added, Valhalla plate. And if you see the decay time, it's only 1.4 seconds. That means that's how long the reverb is getting sustained. Right now it is at -16. I'm going to play it and I'm going to just increase it. And when you're frigid, you can fake being warm. So when we sing while taking a bath, that's how this is sounding right now. And that's not what we want, right? So I'm just going to double click and change it to -16. So the reverb is very less and subtle, and because of that subtle reverb only, we are getting a space of, environment and a sense of depth and all that. Add an adequate amount, okay? It doesn't mean you need to add a lot. One cool way by which you can, kind of fix your reverb, you can go to Google, type reverb and delay calculator. So open up any reverb, link that you get, and I'm going to type my BPM. So let's say it's 120 and I select calculate. Now these are the different reverb or delay settings you need to keep. For example, you want to keep Hall as your reverb. Look at the pre-delay. It is giving you 62.5 milliseconds. And similarly, the decay time. Now it shows 3937.5 milliseconds. You round it up to seconds, it comes 3.9 seconds. So if you keep these settings, this will set according to the tempo of your track. Therefore, you will not have an overpowered reverb in your song. That's what we need, okay? Not just on vocal tracks, on any track. Let's say it's a guitar track or violin, whatever it might be. Even on kick tracks, you know, sometimes we use reverb to give that a sense of space and depth and not make it too raw. So imagine you put a lot of reverb on a kick track, it's going to sound completely odd and it's going to really disrupt the whole mix. So there's a way by which you need to add it. So this is one way that you can follow. You can look at this calculator and do it. Otherwise, how much ever you're sending it, do it through a bus and send a very small amount of signal into it. The third and the most important point is automation. I cannot stress this enough. Automate whatever you want to do, okay? Like for example, I wouldn't add a delay throughout a song. Maybe in places where there's no vocals and there is a gap, that's a place where I'll add delay. I'll not add delay throughout a track. Again, if you want to automate the loudness of your track, putting all the entirety of that dynamic adjustment into a compressor and making your compressor work so much to fix that dynamics is not going to work, because your output is going to sound heavily processed. One compressor plugin has to fix all the dynamic changes that you've got. No, the compressor cannot do it properly and in a natural way. What you could do is automate the volume so that at least the major sections are kind of balanced, and then you can send it to the compressor. Now compressor will still, dynamically make it better, but in an accurate manner. It doesn't have to, do a heavy processing on your track. So I'll show you what I mean. When I click A, these lines that you see over here, these are gain automations that I've done on this vocal track. So without the gain automation, now if you listen to this area, just to melt you down, what was the act you put on? It is very loud. So I cannot send the whole track into a compressor, then it will sound extremely processed. Rather, I will put a gain plugin and I'll go in here to gain, and I've selected gain already. Now all I did was inserted points like this. Suppose I don't like this area, I'll just decrease it or increase it. That's essentially how I did. So now this area and this area will have the same volume. This helps your processing sound a lot more natural. Better to get an original output, right? You get to retain the natural quality. You need to automate a lot of plugins. You don't necessarily have to have all the effects of a plugin throughout a song. You can have it here and there, and that might make your song shine. If you want to learn exactly how to automate tracks and plugins and do automations like this, I have done a whole video about automation and how to properly automate different plugins using the read function, touch function, all those things. So you can click the video that you see on the screen. Before we move to the last point, if you like all these tips that I'm giving you in this video, then you need to subscribe to my channel if I haven't, because there is a lot of videos that are coming up that will be really helpful when you are into production, mixing or mastering. And if you want to read through an article that I wrote, then I recently wrote an article for Music Radar and the link is in my bio. You can check that out as well. Now coming to the last point, it is about adequate volume levels. And by that, I mean the limiter. The way you use a limiter is very critical, because that's how you get your songs to a particular volume level suitable for streaming services. And when I say streaming services, it's not just Spotify. I mean YouTube, Instagram, or any place through which you put your music out. So a typical level will be something like this. If you look at this graph, the LUFS integrated level must be around -14 or -13, because that's what Spotify requires your volume to be. Now there is a lot of debate on this. Some people push it even further and bring it to -10, -9. Sometimes people do multiple outs and they upload separate tracks for separate streaming services. Like they put a separate output for YouTube, a separate one for Spotify and other streaming services. So honestly, it really depends, okay? What I would like to do is bring this LUFS integrated to -14. And if you're wondering, you don't have this plugin and you're wondering what plugin is this is called as ULean Loudness Meter 2, and it is actually a free plugin. So you can just search that on Google and directly download and put it on your tracks. So basically you can put a limiter and push it up, and this will kind of give you a guide as to where the LUFS integrated is at. It also gives you the LUFS short term, and in addition it also shows you the true peak that is coming out of this track. So I normally aim my tracks to be around -14 because that's where I feel my song is sounding good when I've uploaded it on streaming services. But I've also had clients that really want the song to be just loud. And what we need to understand as a beginner is that lots of loudness doesn't mean it's going to sound the same when you put it on streaming services. Sometimes if it's too loud and you're happy with the output, but after you release it on Spotify, it might sound really bad because it's sounding a little compressed and all that. And you might think, why is that happening? Because your mixing mastering was right and it was in a really good loudness, but you put it on Spotify and something happened. So the thing is, Spotify or YouTube or Apple Music or any of the streaming services have a particular limit to themselves. And you need to maintain that limit. I think it's okay if you are below it, okay? But if you're above it, then automatically that platform will compress your track. That's their standard level. Why should we risk our tracks and make it compressed? That's the reason why I usually, prefer my LUFS to be around -14. Even if I push it beyond that, it might be maximum to -12, -11 at the most. I normally don't like doing it beyond that, but this is a subjective topic. Okay, so some people work with -9, -8, and they seem to work really well with their tracks. So this is subjective. This is what I will do. But the point is, don't increase it so much to the point where it's either distorting or it's so loud that streaming services had to compress your tracks. Just make sure you have that in mind. So maybe you can do a trial and error. -14 is a safe space, so you can try -14. Maybe try it out on YouTube first and see if you retain the right quality. If you feel it's good and you want to push it further, try that out as well. So figure out by doing a trial and error method as well. You can put your YouTube videos into private mode and do it also. So these are the 4 important steps that you need to make sure you do it correctly in order to get a pro sounding output of all your songs. These 4 tips are something that helped me a lot. And if you have something additional that you want to put it in the comments, do put them down and we'll all grow as a community. Thank you so much for watching. If you want me to make any other videos on a particular topic, comment them below and I'll try to make a video on that. And I'll see you guys in another video.